So I want to welcome Amanda Whiteside from Amazon Web Services. So welcome, Amanda. Amanda is Global CX Executive at Amazon right now. But Amanda, just to get us started, I was going to ask you to maybe introduce yourself. But I did notice in your background that you actually started in educational terms in industrial design. And of course, today, you've been on quite a journey to arrive as an executive at Amazon, specifically focused on CX. What was that journey like for you, and how did it bring a unique perspective to CX?
Yeah, of course. And very nice to see all of you here today. I'm really, really thrilled and honored to be here. So essentially, my role at AWS within Amazon is head of customer optimization and enablement. I've been at Amazon for 6 years, and so really the function is designed to help customers see the greatest value of AWS products and services at the lowest cost. And it's somewhat of a CX function embedded within the organization, and so we face some of the similar challenges that many of all of you will have faced. But one of the things that I often lean into, as Luke said, is really my discipline and being very multifunctional as I've grown up through my career. I intentionally wanted a sales background. I wanted to get some time into product. I really wanted to understand the different components and often the different stakeholders that you end up connecting with as a result of trying to influence and get the end result for the customer. So it's really helped me understand how to navigate those difficult conversations, how to pitch correctly, and how to bring that information forward so it'll really have a resounding impact with that team, so that you can really get your way as it relates to the customer. So I believe that's really helped me. I studied at university product design, so I conceptually understand how we build and design and how we think about customer journey mapping. And again, that has really taken me a long way in terms of how I think and try to build a design plan for a customer as it relates to design thinking.
Fantastic, Amanda. And I just want to again say thank you for your time. There's also an audience online today, as you know, so who are benefiting from this. I've actually got a direct quote from you here from a previous interview you did in 2021. You were head of customer programs, then also at Amazon. So I'm just going to read this out because this was fantastic. My unique experience has taught me that whilst you can work in one of the most customer-obsessed businesses in the world, unless you have the right structure, mechanisms, and drive, you'll not by default have a CX-focused organization. And I thought that was a great quote because there's obviously a couple of things we'd love for the audience to be able to hear from you on. When you talk about the right structure, what is that? How could it be different for different organizations? And what are those mechanisms, and how did you create that drive? Because it sounds like that was a real immersive experience you were speaking from there.
Yeah, good to hear that quote again. I actually still agree with it, thankfully. But yeah, it's really fascinating. I think often people see Amazon as a very customer-centric business, and we absolutely are. But I think as CX comes through as its own foundation, as its own function, if we think back, it's really in the 60s to the 90s, CX became a concept. But we haven't done a whole lot about it in that time, or at least a lot of companies have been trying to figure it out. A lot of networks like the CXPA came about in around 2010. And so it's still a very recent thing that a lot of businesses are trying to get to grips with. You often see things like a chief experience officer at companies like McDonald's or Apple, where they've really elevated it up to the C-suite. But a lot of businesses that are growing very, very fast, or small to medium businesses, generally put one person in place, or a very small team, or no one at all. And yet they're concerned about why their customer experience isn't intentional. And so for me, I've been through many roles where we really had to fight, and I have colleagues here today that can really tell you some of the war stories of how we really put the customer first. And for me, I guess to give some guidance in how we did it, really thinking about bringing into either your own discipline as an individual or as you build your team, some specific skills that are inherent for you to be successful within a customer experience role. As was mentioned earlier, analytics is key. You have to be able to learn how to pull the data or have fabulous tools like Chattermill that you're able to do that at ease. And being able to do that is key to be able to demonstrate your point, bring value to the discussion. And so I've often found even building a team of individuals that have a finance background is really advantageous, because they really have the ability to try and tie customer data into revenue. And then in addition, you need some attachment or connective tissue with customer services, because that's where you're going to get a wealth of information and data. And so you need to, if you're not directly connected within the organization, at least have that ability to influence that team or stay close to them. Thirdly, you need to learn customer mapping. And that's generally a skill that needs to be learned. It's something that you can learn from a textbook or you can learn online, but it starts to help you to bring all of these disparate parts of the journey together so that you can build that intentionally. The other 2 points are really thinking about customer success, retention, how do you think about customer churn, and again, demonstrating the impacts to the business. And then the last part is somewhat of the exciting part, which is new product innovation. So your customers will also tell you what's missing in the product and then how you can go forward and build that. So however you think about your function, or whether it's just you as a single individual contributor or you have a team, it's building those skills within it so that you really have the armor to be able to take those pieces forward to influence at a more senior level.
Awesome. Fantastic answer. And I'm actually going to sort of draw a little bit further on that, if you don't mind, as well, because these are not all quotes from you, but some just other snippets I found. One of the things I really liked, there wasn't really an answer to a question, but it's something you mentioned I thought was great, that when you arrived in CX, you found your people. I thought it was a really good phrase. And you described that as because it felt like a community that you were inspired by. And so hence why it's fantastic to have you here today with this community. But also you talked about sharing best practices as one of the things that you really enjoyed about that community, and a lot of your inspiration came from lots of people in that community. But you yourself now, whether you like it or not, are a bit of a go-to person on CX. I imagine that you do get asked questions, sometimes perhaps in confidence, privately, sometimes in groups. What kind of questions have you been asked recently? And obviously you don't need to disclose any body or any brands, but I'm just curious, what are the problems that people are really worried about when they're trying to progress their CX programs?
It's a great question, and it's so true. I really love the community of CX, and I think it's because we're all intentionally trying to solve the same problem. And, I don't know if anyone's really solved it yet. So we all feel like we're in the trenches, really fighting for the customer, and I think that brings us all very, very close. We can share a lot of those stories intimately. And so I often have individuals reach out to me just for sharing, coffee chat, mentoring opportunity, and I learn a lot from them as much as we can share with each other. And really, what's kind of similar or what's come to light in the last number of years is how we build and connect the digital journey with the in-person journey, if you like. Interestingly, I had someone that I was speaking to from Singapore Airlines, and a lot of these big brands we often assume have it all figured out, certainly great experience, but behind the scenes they have a team that's really driving a lot of that and how it all works and fits together. And if you think about the airline experience, it's everything from how you book your ticket to how you go to the check-in desk, how your experience on the plane is, as well as what about your baggage and if it gets collected on time. And so it's really interesting whenever you kind of open your eyes and you think, wow, these customer journeys are really multifaceted, not just digital, and how do you bring that in-person experience measured alongside your digital experience? And it really just highlights one of the complexities of CX and why it's never going to be easy for us as a function to have this very, very clear, and really important for our stakeholders to understand how difficult it can be to join all of these very disparate parts together.
Love that. I've got my Jonathan Ross cue cards here. I'm just thinking about one of the things that would be a real miss for this audience, I think, if we didn't ask you why you're here, is proving CX value. So there's proving value to the whole company. That's one dimension. Another one is protecting the investments that you have. I think that's something that Mikhail touched on earlier is a challenge in this climate. And then I think another one, if someone's starting out, how do you build a business case? Any insights around any of those topics would be great.
Yeah, of course. So in Amazon, one thing we're very good at is mechanisms. You'll read anything about this online. And essentially all a mechanism is bringing something forward where we have a writing culture. So we'll write like a one-page document that outlines the problem statement. And so many people will say, you put that in front of the C-suite or senior leaders, it goes into thin air and we never see it again. And really what a mechanism is driving or trying to achieve is that every month we check in on that performance and that progress. So you get a regular reoccurring meeting in the diary, you align that with your senior stakeholders, and once they agree on the problem statement, this meeting is coming in your diary every month, and we're going to talk about customer experience every month. We're going to bring you new types of data, we're going to bring you new feedback. Whatever you committed to in the first problem statement to solve, we're going to tell you that we're behind on that status or that we need to have additional investment in order to get it approved. And so it's really bringing that discussion to the table as regularly and frequently as possible, in a way that holds us accountable, holds your stakeholders accountable. Otherwise, what happens is it can somewhat be best intentions. There's always something that can be more important. And so something as kind of annoying as a reoccurring invite in your calendar will hold you accountable to doing that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you manage now very, very large and diverse teams yourself, but also I think you explained to me in another conversation we'd had that it's not all centralized necessarily in every organization. How does it work if it's not centralized? Like, especially when it comes to business cases and budgets, does that make it harder? Is it more important to be decentralized?
Yeah, it's a great question. In AWS right now, we're in a matrix organization. I have an organization of around 150 people, but they're split around different geos. And so what's really fascinating to me in a global role is about what percentage of the customer experience is somewhat standardized or streamlined. And you would hope to assume that maybe 70% is what the customer expects no matter where they live in the world. But then there's local nuances. How do you think and include those specifics within Latin America, or what we call APJ, which is Asia, Pacific, and Japan? And how do you make sure that you're not building something that is so generic that it suits nobody? And so trying to find a way in which you're building kind of what we would call global parity, but also accounting for those local nuances and documenting them, it requires a lot of rigor. It requires a lot of really looking at your roadmap, really prioritizing what's important. And ultimately, that's a combination of having very local stakeholders that are very close to the customer, but bringing that up to a global centralized unit that can kind of distill and making sure they have all the information at their fingertips to accurately make a decision, bring it back to those stakeholders and agree and align that this is the right way forward. And that prioritization is hard. There's always passion in the room. There's always difficult conversation. Everyone wants their product feature up top. But we have to arrive at a conclusion that ultimately is going to drive that more global parity. Otherwise, we have a different product, a different Chattermill, for example, in every single geo, and maybe then that dilutes the brand experience. So it's always that careful balance.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And you've said in other places as well, solving problems and going further. But you also said customers are expecting that they don't have to tell us what their problems are, which I thought was really interesting, and that we should already know. I thought that was a great quote. Like, what did you mean by that, and how do you overcome that challenge of already knowing?
Yeah, of course.
They have to tell you.
In many roles that I've been in, if there is no customer experience function in place, you really have to go in and find a way to pull your customer service data, get your CSAT, NPS scores, bring all that feedback to the table. But what you'll find is that there's a wealth of problems in there you have to solve, and you're on the back foot. You're constantly trying to give your customer what they already have asked for. This is a defect in your product. And while you're doing that, it becomes very, very hard to also be proactive. Within Amazon, as many of you have ordered packages, you often want to know, where's my stuff? That's our biggest contact reason. Where is it? And so we have all of these mechanisms and ways to deep dive the data to find out where it is. But ultimately, we don't want you to have to ask. We want to be able to tell you, hey, it's running 5 minutes late. It's with the driver. It's on its way. And so getting from the back foot to the front foot is a lot of effort sometimes, but it's really the North Star of where we want to get to for our customers, so that the information is in their hands, it's in a push notification before they even have to ask. That's really, you really want it on time, but if you have to find yourself in a situation where you want to prompt the customer, you want it to be proactive and automated. So you have to build the solutions, build the resolutions to some of those defects, and then you have to spend time investing in a new product solution that is going to be proactive, often using artificial intelligence to do so.
Thank you. And you also mentioned North Star in there as well. Like, how important is it for anyone else setting up their program to have a North Star? Is it crucial? Does it come later?
I think you definitely need that. Often, when we would write a paper, you can anchor on the problem statement, particularly if the problem statement is very defined. But you would often have stakeholders that would say, what are we doing this for? Like, once we fix that one product, like, is your job done? Is our job done? So I think some type of vision statement that ties to the brand, we want to be the best customer experience company because of these reasons. We believe that we can grow our business at X rate because we are the market leader. Whatever that might look like is really important, just to help set the scene for your stakeholders, for them to really know and see that there is a much bigger picture here. And if they could really get behind it, additional investment, additional additional support, putting more folks beside you to help achieve this goal, that, it's going to have a greater outcome. So I think it ties directly. You'll need your vision. They'll want some downstream impact in your revenue, but these are important kind of components of how you build your story.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. Another thing you said is that the roles that are dedicated to CX should eventually become part of the norm. So like looking into the future, from where you've come from, CX dedicated roles are really important right now, I guess, to get the focus. But what did you mean by that in terms of the future becoming part of the norm?
Yeah, I find this a fascinating topic just because I don't think we figured it out. I was saying earlier that CX used to be really embedded within a marketing function because maybe perhaps sometime they had part of the email journey. But actually, we're realizing that CX can be pulled out and be put up at the C-suite level. But understanding what is sitting in that function or what should sit in that function is still very much open for discussion. It could be that marketing actually sits up under a CXO style function, but that's a big deal to pull marketing out from the C-suite. So there's a lot of politics involved there, as well as something like in-store, in-restaurant experience, whatever that might look like, is an important part of that customer journey. So how do we build a CX function? That could eventually become its own silo then. So are you really thinking about CX as being kind of an evangelist function, something that sits up with the strategic part of the unit, but really spends a lot of time with every function? Is that the most effective way to run a CX function? Or is it better that you give them a seat at the C-suite and then have everything under them? And I don't think the answer is clear yet. You'll see different companies doing different things. But what I would say that is most crucial, and if anyone is looking to develop their skills in any way, is develop your stakeholder management. You have to learn how to influence stakeholders that are maybe not your direct reports, and really you're not on their agenda and you're not part of their priority list, and find out a way in which you can really advocate, get in a room, have one-to-ones, really get your point across. And that takes a little bit of work to be able to do that and earns trust. But ultimately, no matter where you sit in an organization, that's how you'll find success.
Yeah, I love that. You also mentioned when you're just talking there about silos, and you've also touched on another question really, which is how you get other teams to act on these insights. Mm-hmm. How important is a single source of truth for these insights in the organization? How does that connect to getting other teams to act?
Yeah. There's kind of two intakes whenever you speak to product. If it's a bug, it really just goes into a bug queue, right? At some point, it'll be picked up. But really, whenever, having been a product manager myself and also understanding the product team, you need to understand how they're motivated. They want to launch the next big product, the next big thing. They do want to launch something that's going to solve customers' problems. And so if you can really package that up in a way that it's going to have impact to the organization, and I always try to talk to my teams about, how do we make sure that whatever we do aligns to a business outcome? Because there's things that you can do that matter, but really we're here to drive and grow the organization. So however you try to, prioritize that or quantify it as a metric, but it's really about a business outcome. So taking something in a way where, and often we would take lots of little problems and think, okay, how can we package this to the product team in a way where it's solving a problem as a new feature, as a new solution. And when you get product teams excited, they'll come back with the idea. They'll come back with the wireframes, the concept, the design. And so you've got to really understand your audience and really try to so both teams can get what they want out of this. As a CX professional, you get a solution for the customer, but the product team get to launch a new feature that goes on their roadmap. They're excited, they're going to get a promotion, they're going to get recognition out of it. So how can you find that equal balance between, both of you to win?
Mm. And Amanda, do you have to be empowered and positioned by your company to have any authority on getting other people to make changes or act on the data given to you, or do you create it in some other way?
I've always created it. Anyone who's ever worked with me before will know that I just grab it and just start working at it and doing it. And really, that's also a very Amazonian culture. But we're here to really advocate for our customers. We're here to build a good experience. And if the business hasn't seen that, then bring it forward. Get the data, get it in a PowerPoint, get it in a document, and just start, advocating in the right way. And you have a lot of materials behind you. There's great tools. There's wonderful things online that I have a lot of confidence that taking that first step is a very possible one. And I find that over time, once you start advocating and you get stakeholders, you get mentors to support you, you'll realize the walls will come down from maybe individuals that really didn't see the value before, and they really start to come along. But it is definitely a journey. And I think that's the thing we really need the community around us to kind of nod along and think, my goodness, I definitely go through that as well, and share those best practices and experiences.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. And again, thank you so much for your time at this summit. I want to take off that point you said about mentoring and make sure that we can have some questions from the audience in the room as well and online, so they can take a sort of mentoring opportunity as well. So I don't know if we have like microphones, or Georgi is at the back there. So if you have a question, please let us know. There's a question down here, Georgi, and we'll start taking questions. Brilliant. And we've got a next question just at the front here as well, Georgi, after that.
Hello.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Jonathan. I mean, Luke.
That's okay.
And thank you, Amanda. Very, very helpful. And can I just say, if I win the iPad prize draw, I'd like one of these armchairs instead.
Yes, no problem. They're nice, aren't they?
Very comfortable.
Amanda, my question is about the balance between customer satisfaction and profitability, and sales and profitability. So no doubt some of your A/B tests, your experiments, will drive results that show you incremental benefit from a sales or profit perspective, but might bring you signals that things are not quite right from a customer experience perspective. So through the likes of Chattermill and other tools that you might be using, you might be seeing some noise that you might be causing dissatisfaction with at least part of your customer base. So I'd like to understand from your point of view, from where you sit in the organization, how you're managing those conversations where there might be other people shouting for, let's roll this out. And yet you're paying attention to your dashboards and like, hang on a minute. So how are you managing that balance and that tension between more sales and more profit and better customer experience?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I know it's top of most people's minds in this function. I think, and I've been in an organization that was very much moving towards profitability in a way that meant that everything was focused on sales. Now, and what that often means is you want the new product to attract the new customer to grow the business, as opposed to perhaps something like a defect that needs to be fixed or solved. And one way that we went about it was to advocate within our roadmap. So we do operational planning every year, which is setting our roadmap ahead of time. And so we sat down and said, listen, we realize that there's priorities in the business for new product features. We want to make sure that there's room for those. But we definitely need a seat at the table for any CX issue. And we managed to negotiate that of the top issues that would be prioritized for profitability, there would at least be one slot for any CX major issue. And that would always be a slot. It would never have to be justified. It was something that we aligned that the customer is important enough to get that single slot of our top 10 product feature. And that took a little bit of fight, but it was really important for us to make sure that we didn't have to justify every single product feature or every single solution. And I think that's what sometimes CX teams can fall into, this analysis paralysis, where you have to constantly justify yourself against a growth product or a revenue generating product. So trying to get in your top 10 that seat that is always for CX is really crucial. And that then allows you to put at least one thing on the roadmap that starts to make that change. If you can justify that, and that was one way that we did it, and it's successful, and you can demonstrate a fundamental improvement in CSAT, in NPS, whatever it is, you can show that that was worth it, the investment was worth it, and then go forward the next year and ask for 2 and continue to push that, because I think you're always going to have that trade-off between those 2 variables, but ultimately, if a company wants to be profitable, it has to protect its customers. So sometimes if you can get a little bit too aggressive on profitability, you may see increased customer churn. So churn metrics are also really valuable in this space as well. And so just keep a watchful eye in the business as well, not just being proactive on the roadmap, but also reactive on going a different direction and how it may not be successful.
Thank you. And Georgi, we had a question just down at the front here. Just the mic's coming. And I forgot to say to the gentleman before, would you mind letting us know your name and your company as well? That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Hello. My name is Eugene. I'm product lead from Holland & Barrett. Yeah, thank you for the great conversation. And the question would be, what is the North Star metric for AWS customer experience? And how do you align like with all of your stakeholders across one North Star metric? And, like these trade-offs between transactional business and customer experience, like more retention-based?
Yeah, good question. I actually have a good example of it, very, very recent. So not to bore you all with cloud services, but cost optimization is essentially allowing a customer to save money or encouraging them to save money, reducing their cost structure and then seeing further increase in products and services so that they grow their business fundamentally. And so my organization created a metric. It's a cost optimization index. And so it's a score that's based over usage and revenue and allows us to see fundamentally if a customer is healthy. So if they should be triggering a savings plan, think of it like a bulk buy. Like think about it like your mobile phone provider. If you are using X amount of data, you should be on Y savings plan. And so we were able to see kind of like a credit score, red, amber, green, if what percentage of our customers were healthy. So we have healthy, neutral, and at risk. And we determined that at risk should, and we're currently testing more of it. If you're at risk and you're not optimized, then you're more likely to churn. And so we then have churn metrics as a result of it. Now, our cost optimization index was something that was very new. We wanted to test it for a long time, really put it through the teams and make sure we were really comfortable with it. And given the economic climate, as customers are, really cost conscious these days, we really wanted to bring that metric right up to our C-suite. And we do something called a weekly business review, which is called a WBR. And it's a chance for all of the VPs within AWS to review the most important metrics. So I wanted that metric in that WBR. And so we were able to put the proposal together. We influenced our finance teams. And finally, we actually only launched it yesterday. So it's a really, really big win for our organization. It has its own slide, and it looks at every different industry segment as well as every different geo. Now, the challenge with it is it's an index, so it's a number. And so the next steps that we have to make is really looking at how we talk about that number on a weekly basis, some of the fluctuations of why it changes. And that's sometimes when you're held accountable to a metric, people want to know why it moves, why it swings, why it goes up and down. And that again puts you into a state of having to really be very, very close to what those inputs are to this output metric. But it's finally put us in a place where people know what the number is, they know that we're monitoring, they know where we're tracking it, and they know where our focus is. And so that's really the journey that we've been on, and it will continue to be our North Star metric. I expect us to be able to build different facets of the index to make it more comprehensive and more sophisticated. But this isn't something I've been able to do alone. We need economists, we need really smart, data engineers. And so back to my original point, having that really strong data competency is really crucial, because really that's where you're able to articulate your points. You're welcome.
Do we have time for more questions? And are there any more questions in the room? A few online, of course, yeah, great.
Is my microphone working? No.
I think so.
Okay, cool. So after covering all the basics, MPS, etc., what's next for reaching a sophisticated CS level?
I don't think it's do one and it's done, or do two and it's done. Thank you very much for the question, by the way. I think it's really about, the best way I would say it is build a portfolio of different tools that you can pull from. Not one of them is going to give you that single answer. I think many people in the audience know that. It's really being able to pull your customer contact data, your MBS or your CSAT, or both if you find it really valuable, but also looking at your retention, your churn data, your customer success data, looking at if customers are happy or do they stay longer, being able to look at all of your metrics within your customer support teams, average call handling time, retention, look at what's going on in your social media. And so you're really building that suite of different kind of angles to pull from, and then complementing whatever those data sources are with regular customer roundtable sessions, voice of the customer deep dives, using your ability to pull word clouds to see what's going on. And that's really, as CX professionals, what takes our time. It really takes a lot of time to do what I've just outlined. because they're all different metrics from multiple different sources, and then you've got to pull together the story for your organization about what that means. So I would say that it's not really kind of one or two. I would say really think about building that breadth of work. And then it's likely you're going to be challenged on prioritizing it, because people would love it to be one single metric, but it's not going to be. Or at least it's a challenge to try, like I said, with the index. So it's trying to find different ways at approaching this and finding out what works for your business.
Question was from Mariana, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Another one from Anne is, we've started to see that stakeholder management and storytelling skills are important for pushing CX insights to management. How do you see this change in the future for CX?
I don't see it changing. I think storytelling is really, really crucial to bring people on this journey. It's really important that we help individuals understand, particularly that don't come from that background, exactly what that problem is and how we're going to get there. You're selling them this big vision of what it's like to be a customer today, putting them in the customer's shoes, telling them where we want to be, how that will compare to our competitors. And so it's really crucial to be able to get very good at that. The other skill that I think is really important is very rigorous project management. You've got to stay on top of some of this stuff. If you commit to driving a certain agenda with a stakeholder, really you're kind of like a mini PMO a little, where you need to make sure that you're sending those weekly emails, those updates, amber, red, and green. Where is your status? And so, combination of being a really good storyteller as well as being really on top of what those committed, timelines are, it will set you up for success in the role.
Perfect. And I'm afraid we're going to try and squeeze in one more question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I think there's one more, is there, Eric? On that list? There was another one in the room as well. I'm not sure, just to keep it equitable. No, I think we're good.
Okay, let's go with it. So this is a question from Wambui. Apologies if I pronounce that wrong, but how is CX in emerging markets different from CX in established markets?
Well, I would say that it can be a little bit more immature in terms of its sophisticated setup. And what I mean by that is, particularly if you look at the UK, we're very in tune with a digital experience online as well as an in-app experience in person. And the pandemic has helped us get there a little bit faster with a more hybrid approach. In emerging markets, they're still figuring a lot of that out. There's a lot of complexity with languages. They're very, very fast-growing markets as well. And so we need to always, one thing I'm always trying to balance is, a majority of my team is in North America or within Europe, but they're very mature marketplaces. There's a lot of foundations that are already making sense. And so newer geos like Latin America, or APJ as we call it, we really need to be very sensitive to where they are in their growth trajectory. The good thing about that is that if you can remember back to what you did with your mature markets, and you can borrow some of those earlier states, introducing those kind of earlier metrics, then some of it is a little bit of a copy and paste of at least how to get some of that earlier information, and bringing that to the forefront, and looking at the comparison. What is North America showing you? What does it look like in Japan? What does it look like in Singapore? And then being just very sensitive to those cultural nuances and trying to understand why. You'll need someone in geo to help you determine and really understand that a little bit better. But yeah, it's slightly different.
Amazing. So all that remains for me is to say thank you very much,
Thank you
Amanda,
for having me.
giving us the time and giving us your insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke. Appreciate it.